This is Wickett on Wisconsin. My name's Mike Wickett. After 10 years in Milwaukee talking sports, I took a bit of a break, but now I'm back and here to talk about the Packers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and more with you. And now inside the Koss Headphone Studios, this is Wickett on Wisconsin with me, Mike Wickett. So I've been meaning to get to this podcast, and thank you for being here for this one. I've been meaning to get to this podcast for quite a while, and to be honest, my children have not allowed that. I wanted to get to this. This has really been bothering me, and maybe you're like me, and you still don't feel good about the Packers season ending the way that it did, because I certainly don't feel good about the Packers season ending the way that it did. I was in a bad mood when I did the end of the game podcast, my instant reaction a couple of days ago, and my mother-in-law was watching the video on Facebook Live, and she said, "You were emotional." And I said, I was emotional. Like, that loss really, really sucked, and it has stuck with me. Like, that game has serious 2014 vibes, and I realized that in 2014, the Packers actually had the lead, and then Brandon Bostic happened, and Seattle went to the Super Bowl. But I feel like we have to call this episode Closure. You know, and normally if you're in a breakup with somebody, and I'm not breaking up with the Packers or anything like that, but if you're in a breakup, you have to have that closure conversation or come to closure yourself. And so I feel like I want to have a closure conversation because I've seen everybody and how upset they are, and everybody has their thing. And I want you to know that I hear you, and it's not just one thing that has caused the Packers season to come to an end. And if you think I'm beating a dead horse, now's the time to hit stop on the podcast. Now's the time to skip on to Joe Rogan or some fantasy basketball podcast. Go see my guy Kane Pittman and his podcast, Locked on Bucks. But I need to talk this out because so many people want to blame one thing for the Packers' loss to the Bucks on Sunday in the NFC Championship game. And you know, I'm recording this, and we're still 10 days away from the Super Bowl. So before the cycle kicks over and we're talking about either the Bucks or the Chiefs as the NFL champions, allow me to close the season or the game and talk about how mad you are, because I see it. Listen, I hear you. I'm right there with you. You know, we might disagree on how we got to where we're at, what the main culprit is. But in a loss like that, I don't think you can actually say there's just one reason why Green Bay lost that football game. Like, for example, if you are on the Kevin King sucks bandwagon, Kevin King was awful on Sunday. And maybe he had some decent plays in the middle of the game, and I know he made a tackle and whatnot, but, I mean, 3 plays that cost Green Bay were directly at the hands or feet of Kevin King. The Mike Evans touchdown where he mistimed his jump. I mean, look, you got to make that play. You know, you have to time that jump correctly and stick with Mike Evans, one of the best wide receivers in football. Jaws got the other side of the field. He can't be everywhere. Do you want to blame Kevin King for the Scotty Miller play? I didn't know this about Scotty Miller. I know nothing about Scotty Miller other than you figure you were going to hear his name a couple of times this season because that's the new wide receiver for Tom Brady that you don't know. Like, you knew Mike Evans, you knew Chris Godwin, eventually you knew Antonio Brown. You didn't really know who Scotty Miller was. Scotty Miller ran a 4.39 40 at the Combine. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Scotty Miller ran a 4.39 Combine 40. How in the world, and I'm going to talk about Mike Pettin here in a second, but how in the world Mike Pettin and or Kevin King, both guys didn't realize that when Tampa came back on the field, they saw a matchup they liked. Early in the game, they loved the matchup with Shandon Sullivan. My guy Showtime got burned over and over and over again in this game in the first half, especially on third down when Tom Brady was picking on him. But they had to see a matchup they liked coming out of that timeout. And Brady made the call. Bruce Arians made the call. They were going to punt. They were going to kick the thing away. And Brady said to Arians, no, let's try this. That's aggressive. That's who Bruce Arians is. That's who Tom Brady is. That's this offense. Throw the ball down the field. And they saw a matchup, Scotty Miller on Kevin King. And when you play press coverage against a guy who has 4.39 speed, you had better darn well jam him at the line, because if he gets 12 inches of space, 6 inches of space, he's going to get around you. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, it played perfectly into the Buccaneers' hands. And that's one on Kevin King, or maybe it's on Pettin. And the pass interference on Tyler Johnson in the end of the game, I mean, yeah, every Packers fan will tell you, yeah, it was pass interference. Every non-Packers fan will tell you, yeah, that was pass interference. He grabbed the undershirt of Tyler Johnson. You can't do that. I don't know if Johnson catches that ball from Brady. It was pretty high, looked pretty uncatchable. But Tyler Johnson gets the benefit of the doubt from the referee, and Tyler Johnson goes to the ground, and Kevin King gets the flag. It's just so upsetting because it was so inconsistent. Like, how many times do you want to hear about how Allen Lazard and Devontae Adams were getting mugged the entire football game, and yet there were no pass interference penalties or holding penalties at that point whatsoever throughout the game until, boom, it happens to be Kevin King. So if you're mad at Kevin King, I hear you. If you're mad at Mike Pettin, I hear you. I also have some bad news if you're mad at Mike Pettin to tell you. Because I got a feeling if you're mad at Mike Pettin, you're going to be mad at him again next season. All right? I don't believe Mike Pettin is going anywhere. I don't have any inside information for you right now, but I don't believe Mike Pettin's going anywhere. The King versus Miller line, I mean, the only thing you have to do on 4th and whatever it was, the only thing you have to do is make sure with 8 seconds left is that nobody gets deep. Nobody gets behind King. Why aren't you calling cover 3 and have all of your DBs standing on the 5-yard line? How did that happen? How did longtime defensive coordinator, one-time head coach Mike Pettin not know to line guys up correctly? And here's the thing, man. If you're mad about Mike Pettin, how do you fire a top 10 defense's defensive coordinator? I mean, the only reason I can see that they're not going to keep Pettin back or bring Pettin back, who I believe Tom Silverstein and Rob Domofsky had tweeted this out, that his contract is expiring. Doesn't mean they're not going to bring him back for 2 more years or whatever, but they were number 9 overall. How many times have we said in the Aaron Rodgers era, if you can just be a mediocre defense, top 15, Aaron will take care of it. The offense will take care of it. How many times in the Mike McCarthy era were we screaming for Dom Capers' defense just to be average? And they weren't just average. They were top 10 statistically. They were number 10. Check that. They were number 9. I think Mike Pettin's coming back. Somebody said today, I saw on Twitter, they were the 9th best defense with top 5 talent. Maybe they are. Maybe they will be next year. I don't know. Maybe you're mad at Matt LaFleur. I hear you. Maybe you're mad at Matt LaFleur. I heard an interview with Dave Sinekin, who does a show in Minneapolis, a Packers show in Minnesota. I know, it's weird. But he said that Matt LaFleur, maybe for the first time, looked like a young coach in a big game when he made the decision to kick the field goal. Talk more about that in a second. But where was the Matt LaFleur that we saw all year in this game? Where was the balance? Where was the motion? Where was the emphasis on the running game? And I know what you're going to say. Mike, Tampa has the number 1 rush defense in the National Football League. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They're great against the run, but you have to try and run the football. The Packers dropped Aaron Rodgers back 55 times and called 16 designed runs. It was 55-16 pass to run. And the entire offense this season has been predicated on a run-pass balance. And in the biggest game of the year, and I understand at one point they were down 18, but in the biggest game of the year, you abandoned that run-pass balance that had benefited you so much. I mean, it looked like a lot of Mike McCarthy's offense. Line them up 3, 4, 5 wide. No motion. Barely any motion. What happened to the offense we saw as the number one offense in the National Football League? Where did it go? And especially when you got the ball back 3 times because Tom Brady gave you the ball back 3 times, you still didn't give it any thought of trying to run the football. I just don't get it. I know Aaron Jones went down, but the offense, the running attack, is much more than just Aaron Jones. It was Jamal Williams this year, to many people's chagrin. It was A.J. Dillon this year at times. The Carolina game comes to mind. I mean, the running game is more than just Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is great, and I don't know if he's coming back, and we'll talk about next year later. But they abandoned the run with 2 guys that have been more than productive this year in A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams. So if you're mad at, Matt LaFleur, I hear you. 6 points off of 3 Brady turnovers? That's on Aaron, and that's on the receivers, and that's on everybody, but it's also on Matt LaFleur. When they went for 2, and Equanimeous St. Brown dropped the ball, it would have made it 28-25. At that point, it was 28-23, and Matt LaFleur goes for 2. I don't have the stats on me, but top of my mind, the Packers don't go for 2 all that often. So to see them go for 2, it's not like they have a staple 2-point play or a couple of them in there that you're so used to seeing that LaFleur can call on that's going to work over and over again. It just seems so strange. Where was the aggressive approach, with the field goal call? Now, I have said, a couple of days ago, and I defend the field goal because your defense had stopped Tom Brady in that second half. I think he had 4 completions and 3 interceptions or something along those lines before that last drive. And you were giving the ball back to the Buccaneers, but you had four clock stoppages. And luckily they slid to give you the 4th clock stoppage. But you had 3 timeouts. Your defense was playing really, really well in that second half. So I'm not as I know there are people that are going to say this is going to live with Matt LaFleur for his entire career, and he'll always be measured by this and all that jazz. And I just kind of disagree with that. I do. He bet on his defense. The number 1 offense in the National Football League, and you bet on your defense on 4th down. You took the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands, the MVP, your leader. Arguably the best quarterback in the National Football League. Maybe number 2 if you want to, throw in Mahomes or Josh Allen. But a guy who's going to win the MVP. You took the ball out of his hands on 4th down. It just didn't feel like this was Matt LaFleur that we had seen for 16 games in the regular season. 16 games in the regular season, and then in the playoffs a game, so 17 games coming into this. It just didn't feel like Matt LaFleur. I don't know. It maybe being down 11 at half and being down 18 after a minute and a half in the third quarter, it took the game plan and got rid of it. But it wasn't like they were having a ton of success running the ball in the first half anyway, or dedicated to it, and then Jones gets hurt. It's like, we're not going to do that again. Again, 55 dropbacks to 16 designed runs for his running backs. That is not the ratio that we saw. That is not the offense that we saw this year. So if you're mad at Matt LaFleur, I hear you. If you're mad at Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, I hear you. I know that, the big, I believe this. Here's what really upsets me. I believe there are some Packers fans that are happy that they lost this football game, so that way they can say, shouldn't have drafted Jordan Love. Shouldn't have drafted A.J. Dillon. Should have taken a wide receiver. Does a seventh best wide receiver in the National Football League draft win this football game for Green Bay? I don't think so. The offense was great. The offense was great this year. Does T. Higgins make this team that much better? This didn't come down to wide receivers. This game didn't come down to, oh man, Aaron didn't have any weapons. Aaron had a fine day. It came down to, I mean, as you can tell, we're going through a bunch of stuff here that led to the loss. They did add a wide receiver a month before the draft. They now say what you want about Devin Funchess. He had a decent career with Cam Newton as his quarterback. What would Aaron Rodgers have done with Devin Funchess? It'll be interesting to see what happens next year if they add Funchess back into the mix. Who's the odd man out? EQ, MVS, not going to be Lazard, not going to be Devontae Adams. But they brought in a wide receiver that was an upgrade from last year. Whether or not it makes Green Bay any better, the offense was number 1 in the National Football League, so I don't want to hear that. They attempted to upgrade the linebacker spot. They let Blake Martinez go. They brought in Christian Kirksey. There were guys shuffling in and out. I think we finally saw Rashawn Gary this year, a guy that the Goot drafted a year ago. 2 years ago now, now Rashawn Gary can play in the National Football League. But I'm not going to tell you you're wrong on any of these. If you're mad at Kevin King or Mike Pettin, or your number one guy you're mad at is Matt LaFleur or Brian Gutekunst or whatever, I hear you. This is closure, man. I don't want to talk about this game anymore, but this is the final podcast that I'm going to do on it. Now that I've had a few days to rewatch and rebreathe and rethink about stuff. Like, I didn't sleep well on Sunday night because all of this stuff was running through my head. And I was so upset that the season ended the way that it did. And one more guy that, if you're mad at, I understand. I hear you. That's quarterback Aaron Rodgers. You have to put him in this conversation. You absolutely have to put him in this conversation. That third down play and the play before it, the second down play, that eventually led to the field goal at the end of the game. How many times do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to play that third down play in his head over and over again? It ran in my mind immediately, why didn't he take off and go to the corner? Just like it did all over with every Packers fan, why didn't he run? I don't know if he makes it. Aaron is a fleet-of-foot quarterback. He's not Lamar Jackson, but he's not Phil Rivers. He's not what he used to be when he takes off, but he's still able to be productive on the ground. You saw it all year. He talked about it in his interview with Pat McAfee on his show this week, how he worked on his legs in the offseason. That was the big key to get things right with his throw and his hitch and his legs. I mean, that saves your career. That saves your season if you're a quarterback. But if you watch that play, he escapes a tackle, so he's kind of, jumping out of the grasp of somebody. If he would have fired it immediately to Devontae, he's open, but he pumps, he hitches. And that's when everything sort of starts to close in on Rodgers. That's when you see the coverage get tighter on Devontae, and that's when everybody says he should have taken off. There were at least 4 guys that could have gotten to him. I don't know if Sue gets him from behind, but there are at least 3 then in front of him and 2 on the goal line, 1 in the end zone and 1 guarding Devontae Adams, 2 guarding Devontae Adams. There are at least 3 guys that would have made a hot pursuit at Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if he gets in the end zone if he scampers off. I do know this. He probably gets to the 2. Maybe he gets to the 1. Maybe he gets to the 3. Maybe 4th and goal from the 2 looks a little different than 4th and goal from the 8. And maybe that changes what Matt LaFleur decides to do. But Aaron let it rip in an errant throw that hit the ground and didn't get to Devontae. And I'll bet, and I thought about this too, if I'm going to assume that Aaron thought he had the trust of his head coach, Matt LaFleur, going into that third down play, thinking he was going to get another chance, no matter what. So I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to throw a little inside to Devontae where no defender can get to it, because I'm going to get the chance to do this again we're going to get the ball back on fourth down. I'm going to get the football back. Maybe that's why he doesn't take off to the corner. I don't know. Maybe the safe play is to try to get it to somewhere, let Devontae make a play because he believed he had the faith and the trust from Matt LaFleur to give it one more shot, to give it one more opportunity, to go for it again on fourth and goal from the 8 or 9 and get, a chance to get in the end zone to set up the 2-point conversion try, which you wouldn't have needed if you didn't try to go for 2 back when it was 28 the last time you scored with EQ. So I have to wonder, did that play in Aaron Rodgers' mind? What's Matt LaFleur thinking at that point? What's Matt LaFleur thinking today? Man, I wish I would have put the ball back in the hands of the MVP. I mean, they're a great red zone team. They don't decide, for whatever reason, they decided never to run the ball in the red zone. 6 plays in the red zone, didn't run any of them, all passes, even though they have all these options and plays and gadgets and motions and things. Didn't happen. But I do wonder if Aaron Rodgers believed on third down when he snapped the ball, when he threw the ball to Devontae, I wonder if Aaron Rodgers thought, regardless of what happens, as long as I don't turn the football over, I'm going to get another shot here. So let's see what happens when I throw it where I threw it to Devontae Adams. And he never got that opportunity. He never got that shot because the defense never got off the field. I mean, when it was first down and Brady hit, was it Godwin or Evans for 9 yards, you're like, oh, great. So there's some closure for you. What was missing in this one? I mean, Aaron Jones was missing in the second half. Aaron Rodgers not having the opportunity was missing on the final, on that fourth down play. And say what you want, man, and I don't want to make this an excuse, but this is something else too. Green Bay really missed David Bakhtiari. Really missed David Bakhtiari. And everybody has injuries, and everybody was missing this, and everybody was missing that. But it was pretty evident that Billy Turner is not David Bakhtiari. I think we all kind of know that. But Billy Turner had his lunch handed to him a bunch. And this offensive line got pushed around a bit. And yeah, they're the best offensive line in football, and they're deep. But when you take David Bakhtiari off that offensive line, you're taking away the best player on that offensive line. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if David Bakhtiari plays in this game, Jason Pierre-Paul doesn't have 15 sacks or whatever he had in this game. All the pressures in the world. He fares better against Jason Pierre-Paul than Billy Turner did. Not a knock on Billy Turner, just an observation. Maybe Billy Turner is the future, who knows? But not having the best left tackle in football changed a lot of different parts of this football game. Momentum changed a lot in this football game because of good for Tampa Bay, pressures. Bad for Green Bay. That's one. That's one thing they definitely missed. So now what? They've got a new special teams coordinator. I don't even know the guy's name. Doesn't matter. I don't know anything about him. You'll probably know his name by next year. I think Mike Pettin comes back. Just don't think that you want to start over with the defense. I don't know. I have no idea. There are tons of names out there that could replace Mike Pettin as defensive coordinator, but I just don't see how you take a top 10 defense and get rid of its coordinator unless you can find yourself a severe upgrade. Maybe Matt Patricia. Just a name thrown out there. And then there's players. Who's gone? Who's coming back? I mean, all this talk about Aaron Rodgers and his comments after the game drove me insane. All of these people know nothing. Aaron isn't going anywhere. There's about 10 reasons why. 2 reasons are the most prominent. 1, he wants to be in Green Bay. And 2, money. You're not going to get rid of this guy. You're not going to trade away this guy. The cap situation is ridiculous. Maybe after next year, they move on and the Jordan Love era begins, but you're not going to do that. You're not getting rid of Aaron Rodgers. You're not sending Aaron Rodgers away. You're not releasing Aaron Rodgers. You're not cutting Aaron Rodgers. So you can start the Jordan Love era without him ever taking a snap. He wasn't active. You're not going to the Tim Boyle stopgap era. Aaron was emotional. And anybody who has inside information about, Aaron going to management and all these no. Aaron's back as your starting quarterback, barring injury next year. Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. He's going to win the MVP at the NFL Honors. We're going to hear all about the offseason for Aaron. And then we'll be back at training camp next August. And Aaron will be your starting quarterback. They might add Devin Funchess back into the fold. The wide receiver spot still should be pretty good there. Bob Tunyon's great. I don't know when David Bakhtiari does come back. It may not be until after Halloween with that torn ACL. I mean, a torn ACL with weeks to go in the regular season, a few weeks left in the regular season. I don't know if we're going to see David Bakhtiari at all next year. And that is a big deal because now you have the draft coming up and you may have to use your first round pick or some big free agent move. And I don't know where they're going to find the money, but you may have to use some sort of draft capital or financial capital to get yourself a tackle if Bach isn't going to be back. And I don't expect him to be back. Why would you expect David Bakhtiari to be back? That kind of injury that late sucks. I think Aaron Jones is gone. Aaron's been great. The Packers offered him some big-time money, but it wasn't guaranteed. They offered him a huge salary, but it wasn't guaranteed, so he didn't take it. That apparently leaked out the last couple of days. And I wish Aaron Jones the best. Don't pay running backs. You don't pay running backs big-time guaranteed money. I mean, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Look at Christian McCaffrey, missed most of this year. Dalvin Cook, banged up every single year. I don't think you get your dollar's worth. I love Aaron Jones. One of the most talented running backs Green Bay's ever had, but you can find more. They have two. They got Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon, I think, has a monster year next year. I think he's your starter week 1 next season. Defensively, I mean, for 12 weeks, we bagged on Preston Smith. But in the final 4 weeks, Preston Smith showed up. I don't know if his salary warrants a quarter of a season, but he's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone. I think Kevin King is gone. Good luck to Kevin King wherever he winds up. They need a corner. They need a tackle. Those are the moves I would like to see them make in the draft. But then again, you probably would have said they have to go wide receiver in last year's draft, and they certainly did not do that. Now, did they? So thank you for closing the NFC Championship game and this season out. The focus of the podcast will shift away from the Packers, more onto the Bucs. We're going to get close to spring training. Excuse me. Just still came to an end, and I'm still not all right with the way that it ended, All right, that's it. Again, I appreciate you letting me talk this out. And if I missed any of your reasons why they lost the NFC Championship game, hit me up on Twitter, on the Facebook page, on Instagram, on the YouTube page, whatever. It's all there for you, all right? And until next time, man, I really wish we were talking about the Packers getting ready for the Super Bowl, but we're not. All right. That's going to do it. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Wickett on Wisconsin. My name is Mike Wickett. As always, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers. Thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin. If you have any feedback or you want to reach out to the show, you can find me on Facebook, Mike Wickett Podcasts, or you can email MikeWickettPodcasts@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter @Mike Wickett. Thanks to Silverman Sound Studios for providing the music for today's show, and you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Until next week, thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin.